So 2 weeks in addition to when we're away, they'll be available for your viewing pleasure in case you missed any or wanted to watch any again. So I see that we are now 10 o'clock on the hour. I will invite Geshe down. Make yourselves comfortable. We'll get started soon. So hi, folks. Welcome. I've seen there's questions about the texts that we're using. That should be all up on the website, but maybe Dave could put a link in there for people who are looking for that. And also, thank you to the several people who have sent suggestions for herbal remedies and different things for Geshe-la's cough. So if I got all of those herbal remedies, we would probably have a year supply situation. So I have picked out one, but he's doing a lot better. So everyone will be glad to know that. Penny just coughed. Geshe just coughs after I said that. You guys aren't going to believe me. Yeah, so can everybody hear Geshe nicely? Okay, great. All right, so let us get started. So first of all, Tashitele, greetings to everybody. Geshe hopes that all of your activities are going well and that you're well and happy. So we are taking this opportunity with this precious human rebirth that we have right now to go towards its biggest actualization, right? Oh, yes, sorry. So we want to do the biggest, most important work possible to get us to our final destination of happiness. And so we now are able to traverse a path which is both unmistaken and very complete, which will really allow us to reach that destination. So as we kind of think about that, then we should have the feeling of being very fortunate. So this opportunity that we have right now, it's not causeless, meaning it did not arise in the absence of causes. And, because of the limitations of our eye faculties, we aren't able to maybe see them, but we definitely know that this opportunity, amazing opportunity that we have right now, it arose due to much effort and positive causes in the past. So we can posit that we have endless positive seeds, positive potentials within us if we've come to this point, right? So our task now is to tap into and to activate all of those positive seeds or potentials. So how do we activate those potentials? We do it through bringing forth powerful things. Two main ones, through exerting ourselves in the practice of method and through exerting ourselves in the practices of wisdom. So then, when we speak about the paths of method and wisdom, right? This is the path to the destination we are trying to reach. When we speak about method, we're mainly speaking about bodhicitta, rooted in love and compassion. When we talk about wisdom, we are talking about, there's many different kinds of wisdom, from subtle to profound. We're mainly talking about the profound wisdom, realizing the nature of reality, the final view of reality. So as much as we are able to kind of go in the direction of cultivating method and wisdom, even prior to being able to realize them, just from sort of maintaining them, what we'll find is that we are much happier, much more content. So His Holiness the Dalai Lama has reflected that with these practices of method and wisdom, what happens as you continuously cultivate them is you come to kind of like a feeling of conviction, right? That becoming a foe destroyer, free from the afflictions, is possible for me. That becoming a fully enlightened Buddha, this is something that is possible for me. So and if we're able to reach Buddhahood, that definitely means that we're able to actualize its underlying causes. So the method side of bodhicitta and the related practices, and also the wisdom realizing emptiness. So if Buddhahood is possible, cultivating bodhicitta and understanding the wisdom realizing emptiness is definitely possible too. So it's really important to keep this in mind so that we don't get discouraged, right? So that we can remain steady in our kind of courageousness, in our confidence to achieve it. So His Holiness's words in this case, something really to kind of keep in our mind, that if Buddhahood is possible, right, then realizing bodhicitta is definitely possible. Then understanding emptiness is definitely possible. This is important to keep in mind. So, in order to be able to bring forth those good and powerful positive minds, let us just take a moment to place the body and the mind in a state of peace. So, just to talk a little bit about our understanding of the external environment, right? We understand that all of those features and aspects of the external environment arise due to a coming together of the four elements. But also, our body is not separate from this external environment, and all of the things in our body are also arising due to the coming together of these four elements. And even when we come down to things like the mind, right, from the coarser to the more subtle forms of consciousness, we know that mind is connected to the elements, particularly connected to the wind element. So the way that this is spoken about is a bit different in Sutra and Tantra. So in Sutra, we're mainly talking about the different kinds of minds and mental factors and so forth. But when we speak about Tantra, what we're really doing is unpacking the winds that are connected to those minds. So through those Vajrayana techniques, when we can sort of tame and hold the winds, just like we could hold something in our hand, then we have a steadiness of mind. We can really stop the mind from going all over the place. Yeah. So we can think of these subtle winds and the mind as being like the horse and the rider, right? The mind is like the rider that is traveling on the mount of this horse, which is the wind. So we're going to take a moment to just kind of bring those elements into balance. So we're having kind of this stillness, just like when you set down a glass of water that maybe has particles in it. From it remaining unmoving, all those particles settle to the bottom. In the same way, we're stilling our mind. So let's focus our attention on the breath. And as we exhale, as we breathe out, we can imagine that we're breathing out all of the namtok, right? The projecting discursive thoughts, all of the unwholesome thoughts and feelings. And Geshe mentioned you can visualize this as breathing out the form of black smoke, if you like. As we inhale, as we breathe in, we can imagine that we are receiving the blessings of the potential of the holy beings, the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. So think that the body is at ease and open more than before. The mind is happy and peaceful more than before. And as we focus in on our minds, think that that main or fundamental mind is powerful. It is in the nature of pure luminosity, clear and knowing. It can cognize or understand any object. So think as we activate that mind, then oneself, we can really reach that true happiness and also contemplate the situation of others. There is not one single being that does not wish to avoid suffering and seek happiness. In this way, they are all close to us. I will definitely actualize the final happiness of both myself and others. With single-pointed, concentrated devotion, I will pray for the blessings of the holy beings in order to do this. Allez, lass. Tømbøy jom den de jin je ba jom bøy han da ba zo be song je ba ta shab su den ba Dewar Sheba Jiten Gemba Kebudu Kalo Gyurwa Lana Meba Lada Minam Gidemba Sangye Chom Dende Jawa Shai Gyadu Bala Chazelo Chede Kyazuji Demba chom dende dijin sheba drashom ba yanda ba zobe sangye sheba dang shasu demba dewa sheba shiten chemba chibu dewe kalo jorma lana meba ladang minangi demba sangye chom dende pe jawa shaja duba la chazelo chede kyasu chi Demba chonde de deje jeba drachomba yanda ba zobe sangye jeba dan shasu demba dewa sheba jiden chemba jebu dewe kalo jowa lana meba lado minangi demba sangye chonde de pejawa shakya tuba la chazelo chede kyabzu chi So ji bege jeje medo zhang ri ra ling ji ni di genpa di sangye jindo mi de buwa ge zhogu nanda ji la je par shu idam guru ratna mendala kam nirya Refuge and bodhicitta. Chedon soge chenam la jangchu bardu dani gyabsu ji dagi chinyen gibe sonam gi jola benchir sange drupa shu. Chedon soge chenam la jangchu bardu dani gyabsu ji dagi chinyen gibe sonam gi jola benchir sange drupa shu. Chedon sogi chenam la jangchu bardu dani gyabsu ji dagi chinyen gibe sonam gi jola benjir sange drobar shu.
다 도매 샤와 아니 다시도 도다 바설 다 간갈 가디나 다 소마지바드 같이 버렸는데.
So in the in terms of the activities of the beginning, but generally speaking, we should say that the activities at the beginning, the middle, and the end, these are going to be important right up until we achieve the state of complete Buddhahood.
어다로 노아파 과야도 다니다 아니 어다 디바 뭐치 파셔야 될래 다시안도 저지 같이 버렸는데.
And so in terms of that which allows us to abandon mistaken paths and also to kind of prevent ourselves from the accumulation of many negativities, it is this practice of refuge and so forth.
어다 가로서 첸들로도 드리냐 봐서야나 면셔와 투마메야 이자 다 될디 빌레들이 괜찮을라 때비 디바트는 쉬요나 어다 대지 파셔야라 다 보게 So
how this works is, of course, this practice of a refuge in the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. It gives protection, but also it is a way of purifying. Even if we didn't do it in this lifetime, perhaps from previous lifetimes, we have accumulated negativity related to the three jewels of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, so it can purify that.
So then,
in terms of bodhicitta, of course, this helps us to bring forth a mind which ensures that the virtuous karma that we accumulate and so forth becomes vast. And in terms of purification, then bodhicitta, through bringing forth this mind, we are able to purify the negativities that we accumulated in relation to other sentient beings. So isn't that an incredible thing that right from the beginning of the session, we come to a tremendously valuable thing? Through the practices of refuge and bodhicitta, right at the beginning of the session, we are able to purify any type of negative karma we may have accumulated.
So
then, it's really because the negativities that we accumulate only happen in two categories, related to the three jewels or related to sentient beings. And it is so it is through these two practices, therefore, of refuge and bodhicitta, that all negativities can be purified. And so if we want a stable, happy mind, also in order to reach our goals, we should understand that the main obstacle to that is unwholesome or negative karma.
So then in terms of
So we often, have tremendous kind of awe and really see it as amazing if somebody has a vision of the Lama or of the Yidam, the tutelary deity. But from one perspective, actually, it might not be as incredible as we think. Why is this? Well, Lama Tsongkhapa saw Manjushri himself, And Manjushri wasn't able to get rid of the block, wasn't able to get rid of the obstacle for him. All that Manjushri could tell him was, go to an isolated place and accumulate and purify, right?
He played with
Manjushri, in terms of like my understandings of emptiness based upon what you had told me, like texts you had told me to look at. I wasn't able to come to a complete understanding. And Manjushri had to tell him, yes, you weren't able to come to a complete understanding. There's nothing I can say that's going to fix that. You have to go and accumulate and purify, right? So all of these things have to come together, right? So absolutely, yes, we have to make petitions and requests to the deity, seeing them as inseparable from the spiritual teacher. Absolutely. We also need to accumulate vast merit and purify negative karma. Along with that, we have to exert ourselves in both analytical and placement meditation. All of these are necessary. And so Manjushri said, then after you do all that accumulation and purification, then, if you do some analytical meditation on the words that I told you to take a look at, you'll be able to develop some understanding, right? But not before that. So it's actually the same for us. All of the opportunities to succeed are there, but we need to proceed in a relaxed and realistic way. That's really important. So let us take our mind into a peaceful state, and we will bring forth our motivation. So what we want to do is we want to gently breathe out, gently inhale, breathe in. We want to try to count a set of 9 of those. So based upon the causes such as faith and compassion and so forth, as much as possible, bring forth that uncommon refuge. And then based upon the preliminary minds of love and compassion, as much as possible, bring forth bodhicitta. If Buddhahood is possible, then definitely I am capable of generating bodhicitta.
뭐야 다들 그런로 여봐 너지 저저 대당인데 사람들이 뭐 셔들이야 저저 되는 여봐 된가서 서로 소소 될 좋아지 못해 그래서
그런데.
미미민 되는 여봐 배장으로 여봐
아,
거를 봐봐는 여봐 지와라
야, 되네.
될 돈을 여봐 제 그래서
가르콜.
나 거를 봐봐 그냥 쳤대 저
알레, 러스.
아주 썸만 노진 로 가라와스
Yeah. Ale, listen. So then as the Apokomasokari, it's a ninyam to get this straight up see the connection between
주동의 사람들이 뭐 셔들이야 와스 계자
Again.
니게 계자 뭐 셔도 와서도 담아라
Yes.
저 어쨌든 눈을 여봐 노지 소소 돈을 여봐 제로 유전 시바서 그래서
Ale, listen. So Geshe said he gives a lot of preliminary remarks, but what we want to do is as much as possible relate it to the words of the text, try to listen and comprehend the meaning of the text, and then things can come out as we wish.
저로 소소 손지엔다 나만 요 와스 이나 저 댕아서 로유서 요 눈을 요 바티르지 대세 보게 tempo 쳐야 그래와 야보자 그래서
So of course we have our own opinions and thoughts and approaches to things, but also what we want to do is to see the values, the value of these texts and try to like cultivate according to the instructions of those texts. This is why we study them.
아니 저도 다 로로 소설라마 소소 뇨레셔도 만다와 때때서 용가 다 내조 로르 첨부도 나와지래 그래서 말로르 첨부 좋은 데를 그두고 그래서
람림 쳔모딜라
그래서 야고 바바 데질 다 그조 데질레스
So then of course different lamas who compose things have their slightly different approaches to the practice of dharma. But in terms of this text of the Bhāvanākrama, the stages of meditation, we can really see this as the foundation stone of the Lamrim, the stages of the path teachings. In fact, we could say it is like a source text for so much that we find in the Lamrim Chemo, right? In the great treatise on the stages of the path. And, as we come across things that may be different interpretations, we can discuss those as well. Okay. So, just want to make sure that we get the page right from the beginning. Trukshudi. Right, then in answer the Chaki Kangpa dinner.
Oh, the money penangel and the pigeon and you chimbo
Okay. So sorry. Okay, yes, so we are on page 12, about halfway down, and the line that Geshe read out is, therefore, great compassion alone is the cause of the non-abiding nirvana of the Buddha. So just to kind of flesh out this term non-abiding nirvana. So nirvana is that state of liberation, for example, attained by any foe destroyer. But the non-abiding nirvana, this is a particular kind of nirvana that only a Buddha can reach. So what does it mean, non-abiding nirvana? The non-abiding refers to non-abiding in two states, the extreme of existence and the extreme of peace. The extreme of I just want to give it to you guys again because maybe the extreme of existence and the extreme of peace. Yeah, sorry. So, of course, when we speak about these hearers, the Shravakas, when we speak about the Pratyeka Buddhas, the solitary realizers, these are worthy things, right? They have achieved nirvana, they have achieved liberation, but it's not non-abiding because they're abiding in this extreme of peace. They're abiding in the extreme of peace. So if you ask, why do they abide in this extreme of peace? Is this because they have not realized emptiness? No, that is not the reason. That's incorrect. So actually, they have realized emptiness. They have had a direct realization of emptiness, an emptiness in terms of the final, correct, and ultimate view. So they have realized that, and this is why they abide in the state of nirvana. So from the point of view of the view of emptiness, the difference for the Śāntarakṣita, these days it's present mostly in the word as the Theravada tradition, and the Mahāyāna, it's not so different. It's not different. It's the same emptiness. And even when we talk about the differences between Sutra and Tantra, the view of emptiness is still the highest ultimate view. There's no difference from the perspective of the view of emptiness that's realized. So then the question arises, right? Like the hearer, the Shravaka, the solitary realizer, the Pratyeka Buddha, they have realized this highest view of emptiness. So then why do they abide in this extreme of peace? What's the reason for that? It's mainly due to the lack of great compassion that they abide in this extreme of peace rather than the non-abiding nirvana. So there's debates about this according to the debate manuals of different Gelug monasteries. So the big monasteries are called the three seats, right? Drepung, Ganden, Sera. These are called the three seats. So Geshe said some of them say that some say that they possess a great compassion, but that they don't possess a great mercy or a great altruism. So there's a debate about the finer points. But what we can say is there's definitely lacking this compassion connected with that pure superior intention, right? The compassion with that pure superior intention is something that is missing. And so they're in this extreme of peace. So for the Bodhisattva practitioner, though, they're not in a danger of falling into this extreme of peace because they are cultivating continuously this mind of great compassion. So we're saying from our mouths that we're going in that direction, but what's coming from the heart, what's coming from the mind, maybe we're trying to do that. It's not so sure, right? But in terms of like which of the two extremes are we abiding in, we're not abiding in the extreme of peace. Like we are abiding in the other extreme, which is called the extreme of existence, sita, the extreme of existence. So all of those beings, those sentient beings who have not yet entered the paths, they are abiding in the extreme of existence. Similarly, those practicing the Shravaka path, the hearer path, and the Pratyeka Buddha path, the solitary realizer path, they're like divided into 4 bits. Before they achieve the state of a foe destroyer, they are still abiding within the extreme of existence. So I noticed that the sun is coming into this room. Is the light overwhelming for you guys, or is it okay? It's okay. All right. Okay. Yeah. So why are we in this extreme of existence then? Right? what is lacking. It's not a lack of an understanding of compassion that keeps us in the extreme of existence. Ultimately, it's our lack of understanding about emptiness. Having not seen emptiness directly, we abide in this extreme of existence, in samsara. Yeah. So really important when we speak about liberation to understand these two extremes, right? The extreme of existence and the extreme of peace. So what are they? We should know what they are. And what is it that keeps us in either of those extremes? Very important. So Geshe said these two extremes are very important, and that's why we repeated a little bit of the text. Just the last tiny section that we did, we repeated it. So we understand that, the method side, especially the practices of great compassion, these are what help us to overcome the extreme of peace. And it is the wisdom, it is that understanding of emptiness which allows us to overcome the extreme of existence. So we're going to continue down. So if great compassion is something that is so immeasurably important, then what are the stages by which one should meditate on that great compassion? So the way to meditate on compassion will be taught from the outset. Begin the practice by meditating on equanimity. Try to actualize impartiality towards all sentient beings by eliminating attachment and hatred. So we really have to understand these two ways of equanimity, because if you were to ask the question, like, how should one meditate on compassion? Do I just do it kind of like right now, like I'm feeling compassion? It's not going to necessarily come out that way, right? So why is it the case that we can't just kind of meditate on compassion and have that come forth right away? It's connected with our minds of attachment and aversion, which are like constantly present. We never get rest. So it's kind of like if you're trying to like put out a great fire, you can't immediately kind of like get to the embers. First, you have to try to douse and diminish the flames a little bit, and then you can then you're able to plant something good. And so oh, right. So in terms of this mind of attachment, right? Especially for those people that are close to us, it is like a naturally flowing river, right? It's something we naturally experience. And so really to kind of deal with that, then this is something that's very important for developing great compassion. So then the other side is this mind of aversion. So it's maybe somebody who's harming us, not even necessarily harming us, just it could be somebody who is difficult, somebody who causes problems or obstacles for ourselves or for people that are close to us, for people that we like. And with this type of person, we might even rejoice when they have a setback, when they meet with some kind of obstacle or misfortune.
Ritual say do it on it.
Yeah. So we have like kind of these extremes of mind that either kind of like reify, that like someone in an exaggerated way, or that diminish, that dislike people in an exaggerated way, right?
Oh, that 사주도 마스는 다 개념보 여보시 속이야레스
사주는 개념보선
사베다 사주 요아와
야야
어떤 노지
개념보선
바른 요아와 개념보서 뭐게 된 노지 보면 돼.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so what we want to do is take this mind, right, that is influenced by this attachment and aversion, and we want to kind of make it even. So this meditation on equanimity is kind of like removing the rocks and the other things from the earth so that it can be nice and flat.
다때 저체 가시에서는 뭐 니님에서 저체 가리토네 다또 무슨 또 가래 다때 손도 만다 왔대요 알다 스탠다드 코로코로지레스.
And so equanimity, just to be clear, there's different ways of thinking about and generating this. This particular text has a very kind of specific take on equanimity, but it is not the only one.
다 다른 아주 끊어놓을 수 있다봐 노진 대처도 손자 준비 차니라.
대처잖아.
내봐.
Oh, right.
로도 제도 강간 대처 춤바 기바인 비차니라. 어느 세뇨 말이야. 제도 못해.
So what we want to do here is to think about how all sentient beings kind of weigh and wish is the same. By thinking how all of us sentient beings have the same wish, this is kind of the rubric for developing equanimity in this text.
라마 체반을 요반 노지 누가 참원이 저때 강가 그거 매봐요 지바. 내가 춘춘이 저때 다두게 대신 내가 요바데 우지바.
It's like the verse from the Lama Chupa, the Guru Puja, saying that, there is not one sentient being that wishes to experience the slightest suffering, or that is ever content with whatever small happiness they may have. So this is the kind of way that we're approaching equanimity in this text.
누가 참어줘요 뭐대지 내가 너희 주시 매봐 내가 주시요나 주시줘야 뭔데요 감각 그건데와.
So really think about it. It doesn't want to experience even the slightest suffering, or is content with a limited happiness, right? So, we're not content with just like kind of minor happiness. We want a really meaningful, stable happiness. So do others. So there are kind of two reasonings behind this that are going to be mentioned as we go through the text. So the first line of reasoning is just this. And so just to be clear here, everybody, the translator translates what I usually translate as suffering as misery, but it's dungel. It's the same word in Tibetan. So just a personal preference there. So try to actualize impartiality toward all sentient beings by eliminating attachment and hatred. All sentient beings desire happiness and do not desire misery. Reasoning 1. So the way that equanimity is meditated and achieved according to the instructions of these texts, this is the first fundamental point. Sentient beings desire happiness and do not desire misery. Next reasoning. Think deeply about how, in this beginningless cycle of existence, there is not one sentient being who has not been my friend and relative hundreds of times. So Geshe said also hundreds isn't to be understood necessarily literally. It just means a lot. It could even be more than that, right? In a way, the possibility is countless. It could be beyond 100, beyond 1,000, beyond 100,000, a million, and so forth. So this line of reasoning takes into account past and future lifetimes, right? We understand that since the rebirths in samsara are limitless, this gives limitless possibilities of any number of sentient beings being close to us. So these two reasonings are meant to undercut our habit of this exaggerated regard and like for the people that appeal to us, and this exaggerated aversion or dislike for not just people, for the beings that we find unappealing. Yeah.
This one,
so if attachment and aversion were minds that could somehow lead us to happiness and peace, they'd be something to consider. But if we look at our experience realistically, we see that attachment and aversion, they don't even allow us a moment of peace. So this is very important to understand, because here we're trying to cultivate equanimity. If we're cultivating equanimity, we need to understand attachment and aversion, because attachment and aversion are the main minds that hinder developing equanimity. So think deeply about how in this beginningless cycle of existence, there is not one sentient being who has not been my friend and relative hundreds of times. Therefore, since there is no ground for being attached to some and hating others, I shall develop a mind of equanimity towards all sentient beings. Begin the meditation on equanimity by thinking of a neutral person, and then consider people who are friends and foes. So then this is really beginning with an understanding of how to deal with the minds of attachment and aversion. So all of our bodhisattva practices that are kind of like hindered, that we're not successful in, we can see that really the obstacles related to that can all be traced back to attachment and aversion. So then having developed equanimity, then how does one proceed? So we continue with the points related to that. So there are 4 points related to that. So, and these 4 points, we could say they're the expression of the stages to meditate on equanimity according to this text, Bhāvanākrama. So you'll notice, if you look at the Lojong, the mind training, or the Lamrim, the stages of the path texts, that they have different points related to the development of equanimity. And Geshe said, really, there's no problem there. Just choose which set of instructions is most beneficial for you. So the first point is to think. The first step in this meditation is to think about the feelings that we have to those strangers, right? To those people that we don't know. If we start there, then it is said that it's easier to get like a feeling to be able to meditate on equanimity.
가르레스를 차도니까 슈 더버치다 베드 메바 가시되네 차도니까 된다 시워치 브링엔 슈 더버도 야말 왔어.
So with those people we don't know, with this category of strangers, we can't say that there's a complete absence of attachment and aversion, but at least with strangers, with people that we don't know, there's not strong feelings of attachment or aversion, right?
This one, 대대래 다 되니 다 어제 여보 차선 자시 소소니
Yeah.
센디니 여기 돌다 봐. 거래 도는 거야레스.
And then, so we develop equanimity first for those strangers. The next part of the instruction is to think about the people close to you, the people that you like, and try to develop a feeling of equanimity for them. Yin.
되니 너 니바테 니.
Yeah.
아니 선바테 다. 되니 전에 세제 터진 거 너나
So then we go from that to trying to experience equanimity for our enemies or for the people that we find difficult. The fourth step is to cultivate that mind of equanimity for all sentient beings. So I'll just give those four again. The first is the strangers, the neutral people. The second one is those who are close to us. The third one is the enemies or the people we find difficult. And the fourth one is all sentient beings. So if you really want to achieve equanimity, according to how it's described in the texts, this is one way to achieve equanimity. If one meditates in this way, you can definitely come to progress and results. So then, having established this ground of equanimity in this even and unobstructed ground, what kind of seed do we want to plant in that? So this comes from there.
니지 사베타나 델라더 션더 용스 지반저로 데네 센지 좀비 고니 니지 곰바 샤고.
So we continue. After the mind has developed equanimity towards all sentient beings, meditate on loving kindness. Moisten the mental continuum with the water of loving kindness and prepare it as you would a piece of fertile ground. When the seed of compassion is planted in such a mind, germination will be swift, proper, and complete. Once you have irrigated the mind stream with loving kindness, meditate on compassion.
So
we've done the task of clearing the rocks and any kind of refuse that may be around, and now the ground is ready to be planted. But if you've ever tried to plant seeds, you know that if it hasn't rained in a while and the seed is like devoid of moisture, bone dry, it's very difficult to kind of get a seed in there properly. So what we want to do is we want to moisten the soil, right? You want to irrigate the soil first. And so we infuse the soil with that moisture of loving kindness. That's the next step. Okay, and Seria Pesa Kandes? Right. So we've made the ground nice and fertile. And we know that when a ground is fertile, whether you plant an apple seed, an orange seed, a banana plant, that all of those things can grow nicely. So it's fertile and moist. And so after we prepare the ground, clear it, and it is made moist and fertile, then we plant this seed of compassion. So one caveat here, to make this kind of analogy very flowing and beautiful in the way that it appears in the text, it proposes first loving kindness and then compassion, and from that, bodhicitta. But Geshe said that in terms of like the actual nuts and bolts of this, it's not necessarily the fact that love has to preface compassion or that compassion has to preface love. The order of those is flexible. Inji minji tambo chik nipa yomare. So Geshe said it's like the two sides of the palm of the hand. If the hand is there and maybe it's facing the front side, we can say that that's love, and then the back side is compassion. And facing from this way, it's compassion and love. But we always know that the other one is present, like the two sides of that hand. So another really important thing to say here is that so those two may not have a particular order, but if we really want to bring forth great compassion in terms of a preliminary that we really have to see in place, I call it this mind of loving concern. It's also described as a mind that sees all beings as attractive or affectionate love. So it's a mind that appreciates all beings. That really has to be there. So this mind that perceives beings as attractive, it is absolutely a necessary prerequisite to whether we're cultivating compassion first, whether we're cultivating love first, it absolutely has to be in place. So when we say see beings as attractive, right, it's not attractive or beautiful in an ordinary sense. It's to see all of them as like worthy or positive, as something good. So Geshe said that, like, a friend of his said, he thought this was funny, right? It's kind of like how all of us see our mother, right? No matter how old she is or how she changes as she goes through the years, we always kind of see her as beautiful, right? As this positive thing. That's the kind of attitude we want to have towards all those sentient beings, right? Yeah. So to see all sentient beings as beautiful, as something positive, that's not necessarily easy. Right? So we have to put lots of reasonings prefacing that to be able to do that. So Geshe said that in the text, whether it says to see all sentient beings, you know, as you go to a more refined state of this, you talk about seeing all sentient beings as one's mother, all sentient beings as being like one's father. But really what we could say is we want to see all sentient beings as the person who we feel the closest to in this life, right? Yeah. That's the principle. Yeah. So really we're kind of like, you know, what's preventing us from developing this love and compassion for all sentient beings is that within that category of beings, there are some who we dislike. That's why as a preliminary for it, we try to see them, to recognize also their kindness as being like our father or our mother or this close person. So then as we continue then, this is the way to meditate upon compassion. Yeah. So then really in terms of the way that this text presents equanimity, proposing two important reasons for equanimity, it then gives 4 points to cultivate in stages to bring forth this mind. And this is definitely a correct way of developing equanimity, and there's no question that if this is cultivated properly, it is a mode through which one can achieve equanimity, for sure.
garse na so the masasita.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Da.
Yeah.
Bama masasita.
Loso. Oh.
Huh?
So that
Huh?
we're doing the thing.
Masasita nila.
Yeah.
Tell say manyon ba de se kari to ni.
Right.
Da dunya to bama masasita so. Sita san de se se nyu go ri ji la da chapa chu che wa. Ri ji la ko ni chowa shu che mo yo ba. Ri ji la to me ba ji go do was. De da nye ge sho lo chapa shu che wa de se kari ge je. Da ge sho lo do shu che wa de se kari ge to ni.
So the other way to cultivate this, which is explained in some texts, is the same principle, but like, I guess we could say like a different presentation, right? We visualize somebody who is neutral, a stranger, and then on either side, somebody who we see as a friend, who we see as close to us, and then on the opposite side, somebody who we see as an enemy. As we gaze upon those three people, in the center, the stranger, and on either side, the friend and the enemy, we kind of think about, why are my feelings for these people different? Why am I experiencing so much attachment for that person that I see as my friend, as close to me? Why do I experience this aversion for the enemy? Why do I feel that?
This one, what I tend to the days and dog, then I just said to what you was the
So it's based upon the same reasonings, but it's just a little bit of a different way of thinking or conceptualizing about the same principle. So some people say that when you visualize in this way, like the stranger, the friend, and the enemy, and kind of contemplate in that way, it might be a little bit of an easier method of bringing forth equanimity. Yeah. So when you do that, you first kind of visualize and meditate on these beings. And then, for example, when you investigate the enemy, you think that, are my feelings for him now because he or she has always been my enemy? Like, have they definitely always been my enemy in previous lifetimes? Were they even my enemy yesterday or last week? And could they change from being my enemy and to being my friend, right? So you think like that. Then we develop a fundamental understanding in that particular being is not always going to be my enemy, right? That's not static. Yeah. Huh? Yeah. Oh, right. Sorry. I think it's a very simple thing, but I'm just not understanding it so well. So company din so di mi din so kandis davores. Oh, ganso supo di davores. Oh, right. Yeah. Oh, okay. So okay. Now I think I understand what he's saying. So it was easy, but just the phrasing of it threw me for a loop. Anyways, so we have this Yes, Hagosan. Huh? Yes. Yeah. Ale loso. Nganso kampa poyadi, kampane kampa droyadi, dinganso kewa jebujayadi. Na kampa denso dradang yen yinda wuchik samotang.
Kumba the leader was leave.
Yes. Ale. Okay. Yeah. Ale. Okay, so just as we change our bodies, just like moving a house, I'm going to do my best. Just as we change our bodies, just like going from one house to another, the person who is kind of helping us in this house, we may see as a friend, but in the next life, the person who we saw in this lifetime as our enemy, they could be the person helping us in that house. So these are not situations that are static. So
디세도 사자지기 체바대에서지래 막 녀임바 된다 찌빠도
So we see the people of this lifetime in those positions as kind of consequential, but actually the person of this life or next life who is our friend or our enemy, this is, just something that is changing.
하고서 더 다든지 전에 세피긴 알레 뇽바디아 코로타
So cultivating in this way is really kind of an effective way for being able to develop that feeling of equanimity. So if we kind of look at those reasons, then things are going to unfold for us. Yes, you think also kampa pach or chikyo kampa yendak chike dra chikyo itikadesre kampa sunasayam.
첸디그니에 단다 요사 쿠바트는 로바 지기요 알아봐.
Yeah. Okay.
이탄니에 저거 두아스.
Yeah.
나 티그 쿠바 파쇼트는 로바 지기요 알아.
Yeah.
나 치바레 두아스.
Kampa di dabu pach.
단디와 지나스 달지나 리라워스다. 단디그 두아스.
노스.
오다 텐다 텐데 예체는 단에 머스시 단에 다데.
So, whichever way we kind of cultivate by thinking about the common wish of those sentient beings, or by thinking about the visualization of friends, enemies, and strangers, those are just two methods that are getting us to the same place. What's the place we're trying to get to? Equanimity. And we're also not saying that person close to you is bad. Please don't take that away from what we're saying. What we're saying is that the people who are kind to us and who are pleasing us right now, because of our exaggerated view of them, we disregard other sentient beings. That's the problem.
So
the next one, so we're on page 13, identifying the nature of suffering. So Geshe is just glossing this, saying that if you talk about the nature of compassion, what is that nature like? So this is what Kamalaśīla is explaining. The compassionate mind has the nature of wishing all suffering beings to be free from suffering. Yeah. So when we say great compassion, this has a very specific meaning. The basis of the arising of that compassion has to be all sentient beings, not a single or a particular group. Tambodi asemshin tamje nipadi. Yeah. And the suffering that we think about is the second part. The suffering is every single suffering. We have to think about getting rid of that. So it's all sentient beings and every different type of suffering that they might wish to experience. That's what we mean by great compassion, wanting them to be free from that. So this is also one of the reasons that the Buddha came into the world, right? He wanted to benefit sentient beings. And the Buddha went to many different wise teachers. And he thought, okay, like they're able to propose maybe methods to get rid of the suffering of suffering. And they're able to propose methods to diminish the suffering of change. but they're not able to propose a method by which every kind of suffering can be uprooted entirely, right? And you can't get that just through the kind of samadhi and concentration that they're teaching.
This one, that could be the negative to Kali Matuba, the Mayapo Isa. That's all of Majedo Mandawa.
Yes, yes. So one of those gurus said to the Buddha, "You are a student possessing great resolve and wisdom. This samadhi that I am teaching, it is presently the most sophisticated system available in the world. So if this is not getting to your goal, actually you need to leave and you need to cultivate on your own. That is what you should do." So then, of course, we know that the Buddha left all of that behind, went into seclusion, and engaged in his meditation. So you may ask, when the Buddha kind of went that extra length to get further to what those other teachers were teaching, what was he uprooting? He was uprooting the all-pervasive or compounded suffering. Because as long as this all-pervasive suffering is present, we can't have a lasting state of peace.
So
of course, suffering of change, they're not necessarily pleasant, but these are like the leaves on the tree of suffering. We need to address the trunk and the roots, which are all this all-pervasive or compounded suffering. We know that if we don't kind of locate the fundamental suffering, this all-pervasive suffering, then we will not be able to achieve real happiness. Because unless you cut down the trunk and dig out the roots, then the branches and the leaves can grow back, can't they? And because when the Buddha came into the world, there was not a teaching which could actually help us uproot this pervasive, compounded suffering, he had to proclaim something that had not been proclaimed before, and this was the doctrine of selflessness. So we are going to continue down. So as we'll go down further in the text, it's going to be helping us develop the compassion by thinking about the different sufferings beings experience that we wish them to be free of. So then next time we will start there. So we will now put aside Kamalaśīla and we will turn to our text of Jegampopa. So Geshe said that this is like the words of this text are very beautiful and also easy to understand. But Geshe said maybe not all easy to understand because some of it's pretty deep too. Yes, so we are on page 2 and you will see a headline that says 10 necessary things. 10 necessary things. Yes. So, the 10 necessary things. Number 1, you need to stay independent so as not to lose your true priorities. So what are our real priorities in this sense? We should understand that our real priorities are that true happiness that we spoke about. In terms of that true happiness, if we want to achieve it, what do we need to prioritize? We need to prioritize the correct paths and methods that are going to help us achieve that. So if we have this goal of true happiness that is worthy, but we cultivate a method that is mistaken or unworthy, we will not be able to reach that happiness. So discerning the correct method is very important. So starting right from the basics and getting on the path, opening up the path correctly through understanding fundamental principles like the causes of suffering are unwholesome karma, and the causes of happiness are what is wholesome, and prioritizing that. Two, you need to follow the words of a sublime master with trust and exertion. So it's through a combination, really, and some of us will have one in more measure than the other, but it's both through our faith in the instructions of the teacher and through here what's given as exertion, but really it just means effort. It's through our faith in the instructions and our effort in cultivating them that we get where we need to go. Yeah. Yeah. So when we talk about cultivating those things, we often speak about them as a progression. The first part is understanding the benefits of the mind we're trying to cultivate, of the realization we are seeking. The next one is to develop a wish to achieve that. The third one is to make a steady aspiration. And from that, joyous effort towards that will naturally flow. Yeah. So if we don't have an understanding of the benefits and the wish and the aspiration in place, we can put effort into it, but effort in the sense of exertion. So in this way, the translation of the word exertion is good here. It's like we can force it and have some effort, but that's not sustainable without a steady aspiration or effort, right? We can like we can kind of grind it out for a while, but that's not sustainable, right? We need to be sustainable. Ale, konso kikor
야, 그래서 요양고 죽기더라 요아레스.
Ale, loso.
Geshe temba kal라서 동생. 샤서 소징한데.
Ale.
샤서 소징한데 문데 내밤매.
샤소기 선지스나?
샤버서 손지.
샤버송기 선지스나?
손지 샤버서 로토고 말아와. 자기 책에서 앞에 도 말해. 동도시에 다 기다려.
샤버송스나 가르래. 디트레시 자쇼. 직제시 자고기래. 도마도시
니마서 손지 사 로토고 말아와.
Ale, nimasum.
샤버송.
So Geshe said that when he first came to the Tantric college, right, to the Gyume Tantric college, where the Geshes go after their study, some of the Geshes were like, I'm going to do it all. And they started like learning the mandalas and how to draw them and all of this stuff, just like in the first or second day they were there. And then Geshe-la's friend, Geshe Tempa, said that, you know, nobody's going to become a Buddha in 3 days. Let's get real, right? So we have to kind of plan out the things that we're learning. So Geshe said that, you know, when the monks studying were walking together, Geshe Tempa said that, and he kind of really laughed at it. But some people were very displeased with that proclamation. Yeah, because it's maybe a little bit sarcastic. Nobody became a Buddha in 3 days, so maybe not everyone necessarily liked what he said. But yeah, so Geshe said it's a little bit sarcastic, but the meaning there is we have to pace ourselves. We can't do everything right? We have to pace ourselves.
어떤 아주 가와타는 리라버했어. 단다 자기에서 냐마 같이 돼서 그때 그것도 필때 뭐 야만을 넣어서 하고 그랬어.
So Geshe said, he's really seen this over the years with people who practice. People who just go from nothing to kind of full speed ahead. Usually they can only sustain that for a very short period of time and they get discouraged. It's the people that are steady, right, that really make progress.
대다조 가리 말해봤어요. 배 때문에 봐. 아니 대바 덤바 대바 어다 되지 때문에 봐 이제 되res.
And so kind of why do people kind of proceed like that, like kind of like full on the gas and then nothing? He thinks, Geshe is saying that it's because they didn't develop these preliminary steps, really studying to understand the benefits of what they're cultivating, developing kind of faith in that practice, and then having a stable aspiration that's in place, right? That's really the way to go. So we can see this method also is expressed beautifully by the Buddha in how he taught, especially if we look at the texts in the middle turning of the Dharma wheel. Those begin with an extensive explanation of the benefits, right? Other great texts, the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, Shantideva begins with the benefits of the mind of enlightenment, right? So this is the example. That's what Jigden Kare? We can also see that, like in the worldly endeavors, if people are purchasing a car or their home, right, a substantial purchase, they first kind of understand the benefits of having that thing, which allows them to have kind of an aspiration and so forth. Geshe said faith doesn't really work here in the ordinary sense, right? But they have an aspiration to achieve that, and then they're able to go to the effort necessary to get the resources to purchase that, yeah? Yeah, so Geshe said, please don't take this worldly example to say this is the true meaning of faith or joyous effort, but it's just to give you an idea, right, of how we proceed. So number 3, you need to decide on your teacher's unerring oral instructions by understanding your shortcomings and a virtue through his advice. So actually, just for those who are, just like be quick. So just for those of you who might be aware of such things, the his is not necessary here. It's the Tibetan's gender neutral, so you could put there here if you want. Yeah. So we can really think here of the embodiment of the warning about selecting the master carefully. Think about the story of Angulimala, right? Angulimala was a very sincere disciple, but he met a teacher who maybe in the beginning they gave some good advice, but by the end they had a very evil intent, and this compelled Angulimala to a lot of negativity, right? And Angulimala, though, he was fortunate because he had a very positive imprint somewhere in his mind that was powerful enough, despite all that negativity, that he was able to meet the Buddha in the road. And then from there, he was able to improve his lot. The next one, you need to assimilate the Sublime Master's realization with discriminating knowledge and persistent devotion. So really not so much difficult here to understand, just, taking them as an example and using that as a way to kind of really develop your own perfect practice in method and your own perfect practice in wisdom. That's okay. The next one. You need to remain untainted by faults in thought, word, and deed through being mindful, conscientious, and careful. So think, Geshe said here, think about the teachings that you've received on the 4 doors to the accumulation of faults and how to close those 4 doors to the accumulation of faults. So Geshe said, really, this information is available to you in Nagarjuna's text, specifically letter to a friend. And also he speaks, Nagarjuna says, that we can change, that one who was formerly heedless, right, and develops heedfulness or mindfulness is like a moon that has been cleared away from the clouds. So mindfulness and introspection are both very important. Some scholars say that if the mindfulness we develop is based upon understanding the reasonings behind it, the reasonings behind why we develop mindfulness, that introspection will naturally be in place together with it. So that's an approach to consider. So the way to proceed, and this is true of any meditation you're doing, even if you're focusing on samadhi, developing deep concentration, if you have approached this kind of development of samadhi or whatever based also on a wisdom of reasoning, the fact that wisdom was part of your approach to meditation means that naturally, in addition to being able to be mindful of the meditation object, in other words, so mindful here means to hold the meditation object successfully, you'll also have the introspection necessary. From that cultivation using wisdom, you'll have the introspection necessary in the background. So very important. And so introspection also, so I said to Geshe, some people might not be familiar with the difference between mindfulness and introspection. So let us define introspection. Introspection, Geshe said, is like the spy. It's aware of what's happening in the mind, laxity and excitement and so forth. Ane? And also, it's a very tricky thing because when the introspection is too intense, that can actually throw us off our object of meditation, our concentration. So it needs to be in place in just the right way. So we need to be really skillful. And the best way is by cultivating wisdom and having that introspection as a side effect. We need to be really skillful to have that introspection present, but not to the point that it causes a distraction. The next one, you need to keep your resolve steady and unwavering with the armor of fortitude. So we know what the armor is, right? We can think about ancient times when soldiers went to war, they would put on this big metal suit. So the armor is kind of that image. And Geshe said, for those of you familiar with the Vajrayana teachings, this armor visualization is also something that's really important. So the armor that we develop in our mind, it's really that kind of mental resilience and awareness that prevents our practice from degenerating. That's armor in one sense. So Geshe said he noticed that we are getting time to the Q&A, so he will leave the commentary aside for this moment. And just as we go into the dedication before the Q&A. Of course, we sometimes like to go a little long. We have a lot of Q&A, but if you need to get on with your day, please feel free. There's absolutely no problem. Stay as long or as short as you like.
Yeah. So
Geshe said also, once you leave the class today, especially with a really profound text like the Bhāvanākrama, it's not just enough to get the teaching. We're going to want to read it over and think about it again. That's also really going to help you. Because you guys all of you also have all of your own wisdom, right? And using your own wisdom as you look at it and develop your own understandings. That's part of this picture too. So then with a mind of joy, let us lift up our dedication. Jangjo semjo rinpoche maje panam jeju rechi jewa nyamba meba yang gone gondu pewa resho tongni tawa rinpoche maje panam jeju rechi jewa nyamba meba yang gone gondu pewa Show Jambe Pao Jidar Kyamba Thang Gundu Zambo Deon Dejin Deda Gungi Jesu Dalo Chir Gewa Dida Damje Radungo Dusu Shebe Gewa Damje Ge Ngowa Gangla Chodu Ngabade Dagi Gewe Zawa Dikun Kyang Zambo Joji Radu Ngowagi Gangri Rawe Korwe Shinkan Dir Pendan Dewa Malu Jongwe Ne Chenre Ziwang Tenzin Jatsuyi Shabe Site Badu Tenjo. So we, through our study and engagement with the teachings today, have definitely been able to establish good roots of virtue and wholesomeness. Through these good roots, may all negative actions and thoughts of beings be cleared away. And in this way, may beings abide in virtue and happiness. And for our great purpose, may all of our practices be accomplished exactly as we wish. So we will leave it there. Geshe's asking, what are you doing? What happened is my cup of water spilt on the carpet. So I'm just moving my cushion so I'm not sitting in the water. Geshe said he thought that I was trying to cut my nails or something under there. No, just the carpet got wet. So any questions? I did see a hand at some point. I was thinking it was maybe Sam. No? Anybody else?
Yeah,
Thanks. Good night.
We do have a question from Facebook.
Yeah, let's start there then. Sounds good.
Okay. Actually, I think it's YouTube. Yeah, YouTube. Okay, so here it is. What is nirvana versus emptiness?
Okay. So nyangen le depa tang tompani di kepar kandes chikres. Yeah. Yeah.
tumba ni koya sejle so ta dig ngaro so ta no ge neba shiki senge ba kanga tuma so was.
So the thing to understand here is that when there is a mind that correctly comprehends emptiness, all of the mistaken minds that cause us trouble and suffering are purified, are cleared away.
다 세 냠바 냠바가 no tsawa mari pase atka tsoma kadi zisuna ani nyangelen te pase to pares.
When ignorance, which is the root of all of the unwholesome minds, is cleared away, there is a complete absence of the unwholesome minds, and then one abides in a state of peace. This state of peace is known as nirvana.
This one, nyangelen te pas dachomba mat nyemo mase bada ngartung ngandro yungu yo ba. Tumba ni tu shira ta tandane so ta pia pochena ta loto ko marwas. Ya.
Tonito bishara blang togo marwas na.
Tunito bishira to bala.
Yep.
Nganzo yung ala.
Yep.
Loto ko marwas.
Ale loso.
Nyangelen te pas sa dachomba to go was.
Sa dachomba go dos. Ale inenganso di tonito bishara ngosu tokpa di deni nyangen le depa lamsang togyo marestonda.
Aje. Tunito bishira sana tu ya tumba ni sana ko yechiro wa tumba chires.
Yes.
Ko ta ki kares kitawat kata diwa.
Mare ko tompa ni dang nyangen le depa kepar kandes chikres. Kodi segire.
Seshiwa sa tumba ni to tunito bishira to nyangen le depa so no to kares. Tumba ni ser yete. So
here we have to think of three things, really. We have to think about emptiness, and emptiness is the object that we are cultivating. And it's an object which is an absence. It's an emptiness of inherent existence. Then you have a mind which understands that emptiness, which is the wisdom realizing emptiness. And then apart from this, you have a state of nirvana or perfect peace. So we have to understand kind of these three parts.
This one, Tumbani is a pena chingan des and Anzo long hot kata and the current is chingan do it a lot of us.
So if you look at the mala that Geshe is holding in his hand, when you hold out that mala or rosary, like conventionally we'll say that there is a rosary in that hand, right? That's the first impression.
Hot kata in a chinga tell
and when we first see that mala or that rosary, there is a first impression, a first appearance that there is kind of like a solidly existent rosary that is there. So the mind that says that is a mala, this is a mind that is based in reason. We can't say it's incorrect because there is a mala there.
But together
with that, there is another mind, which is grasping at the mala as being something having a findable, solid, inherent existence. And that appearance and the mind that is grasping onto it is mistaken.
Yeah.
And if that mala was really existing as a solid, inherently existent thing, then you should be able to point to any of the individual beads and say that that is the mala. But we know if we take the mala apart and scatter all of the beads and the string that is holding it, there's no longer going to be a pinpointable, findable mala. So that lack of findability, that lack of solid existence, this is the emptiness of that mala, of that rosary.
Yes.
When you understand that, then you have realized that in a very stable way, then that is the wisdom realizing emptiness. Chatang. Yeah. So what is the benefit of that wisdom realizing emptiness? From the initial wisdom realizing emptiness being present in the mind, then attachment and aversion are ceased.
Yes,
So starting at that point, we continue to cultivate, and eventually we will come to a level where the afflictions are completely cleared away. Oh, right. Just like snow that has completely melted away, right? There will be an absence of the afflictions in the mind. So Geshe said he likes the image of a snow because snow is something that melts away gradually, right? And for most of us, it's going to be that our afflictions are dissipating gradually. When the afflictions are absent from the mind, there's no suffering anymore, because suffering is a result which has to have a cause that's connected with the affliction. So suffering is overcome. Nyumongdang dungen mepade. So the Tibetan word nyangen le depa, nyangen refers to dungedang nyomong. Nyange refers to the karma and afflictions. Le depa means being separated, being free from those. So that's the meaning of the Tibetans, the word that the Tibetans use for nirvana, actually. Yeah. So we should understand, to answer your question, the relationship between these three: emptiness, the wisdom realizing emptiness, and nirvana, and then it will become clear. And it's also really important to understand, when we talk about the emptiness of inherent existence of any phenomena, that emptiness has been present since always and is a fact since always. But because it was not known, the Buddha was the first one to proclaim this fact of emptiness. But things were always empty in this way, even before the Buddha came. So this idea of emptiness, this idea of enlightenment, this idea of liberation, these are just kind of how things are. These are just the way of things. And that would be the case whether the Buddha came or not, right? But the Buddha came to explain these to us. So who, though, gave us not only the understanding of these, but a method to cultivate them, that is the road to get to the destination that we desire? It was none other than Buddha Shakyamuni. And this is why he is called the propounder of the teachings, the fundamental teacher. So Geshe said, sorry, he went on a bit of a tangent, so maybe too much, but hopefully you got the answer there somewhere to the question. Anybody else? It's hot and cold, eh? We were an hour overtime yesterday with so many questions, and today it's last week, and today it's very quiet. So yeah, Geshe said that he doesn't mind so much if there's no questions, because last time we were an hour over. Dave, go ahead. Go ahead.
So I saw that Ryan unmuted, and then also Yulita. So Ryan, go first, and then Yulita.
Sure. Actually, I would like to thank you, because it was so clear today. All this love for Shravaka, for Mahāyāna, for Theravada, all is the one. Thank you so much.
Yes, Geshe said that's true, because they all must be cultivated, actually.
Yeah. Even love for Ashura, which are so present in our life now.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you so much, and thank you for blessings.
Oh, no problem, Yulita. Thank you. That was nice to hear. Geshe said, it's so important to understand the things that unite us, and really the 4 Arya truths, the 4 noble truths, and the 16 aspects of those 4 noble truths. This is something that really goes across any system of Buddhism, right? And for the Bodhisattva practitioner, because in the first kind of 2 stages of their cultivation, the afflictions are still an obstacle, they have to pay a lot of attention, the Bodhisattva does, to the 4 Arya truths and their 16 aspects. Once the Bodhisattva becomes an Arya Bodhisattva or a noble being Bodhisattva, then they do not have to worry so much about the afflictions, so they cultivate other aspects of their path. Yeah, because by the time they get to that stage, then the afflictions are no longer really able to hinder them, so they don't have to put much effort into diminishing them. Yeah. And sometimes, it is said that those afflictions in some instances can even act as an impetus for the Bodhisattva to engage in positive things. So there's lots to discuss there. Ryan, go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. My question is about Lojong, or mind training. So when we encounter some difficulty and we recognize it as advantageous and we apply the antidote, afterwards there can still be this sense that I do not want to see this in my world. Is that an altruistic thought, or is that further aversion?
Gotcha. Tene nganso Lojong seria di nganso netso duksha denso kien dapochik si gogire dua roa tene chichena netso duksha dela tene nganso yapochik drug gogire duas ine barche lamdu kierpe jela nganso o di barche di kien dapochaso ine barche di nge zamboling nangla tongning jogi madus karin sena semchen la kange tegire duas samso di yapochik res di 당셈 다버레베스.
미메테도 야버로 왔. 하고서 어다 이나에 대표 걸어 봐줘도 다 저도 강가 패. 자완이 매봐줘야 내가 그거.
So not wanting to see that in the world, Geshe said, definitely it's a good thing. Definitely it is an altruistic thing. The best is if it transforms into action, that we do what we can to eliminate the cause as well as the expression of that obstacle. Yeah. Rosso.
Yeah, shitun deva ganzo tumani ngeso to toyare. Akosara chike jungene to toyare. So dejire was.
Kare.
General de chawate.
So really, if we understand it, our wisdom, our ability to develop this wisdom realizing emptiness, and also to actualize the Dharma jewel, this happens based upon transforming obstacles into the path, because it is really a comprehension and understanding of those obstacles that allows those realizations to unfold. Yeah. So when we talk about the Deva realms, the God realms of the form and formless, right? Normally we see that as a place of tremendous pleasure and whatever. However, beings there cannot newly bring forth wisdom realizing emptiness. They cannot achieve the path of seeing while in those realms. Why is this the case? Because there's no obstacles to transform. There is no suffering around them, and hence no impetus for their practice. So in that particular life, so for the Deva of the form and formless realm, we could say the 2 types of suffering, suffering of suffering and suffering of change, are not present for them. They don't experience those 2 types of suffering. So that's what I was saying. But at the very end, Geshe said, yes, at the very end, when they have to leave that lifetime, then there's a suffering of change, right? Because they're worried, oh, I have to leave and go back to like lower samsara, right? But our current form within samsara, it provides us the perfect opportunity to transform these obstacles into the path, and the correct implementation of this is what can allow us realization.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome. So Geshe said, if there's no further questions, we don't need to pull them out of the ether. It's okay. We can. We're just 4 minutes to go anyway, so we can end it here. So thank you everybody so much, and don't forget to join us next week if you're of a mind to. See you later. Thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Geshe.